Welcome to Ask the Expert, your go-to web series on all things business and finance. I'm your host, Nicole Pride. So today is the first of a special series on investing in Africa, a continent rich with financial opportunities across its 54 countries. From natural resources and agriculture to tech, tourism, and entrepreneurship, Africa's economic landscape is primed for growth. And helping us guide our discussion today is none other than Dr. DeForest B. Soaries Jr., founder of this great D-Free movement, who has deep ties to Ghana's development. For over a decade, his significant impact has been felt through philanthropic endeavors, job creation, and various investments. So, Dr. Soaries, thank you today for helping us coordinate this discussion. There seems to be so much energy around the topic of investing in Africa.
Well, thank you, Nicole. Thank you, first of all, for letting us invade as the expert. You're here every Wednesday, and you've been talking to some of the most dynamic business people and financial success stories that we have. And we decided to include this topic in our regular weekly Wednesday series called Ask the Expert. And we have some experts on the subject of investing in Africa with us today. For those who don't know, let me tell you how this started. I've been traveling back and forth to Ghana, West Africa on a regular basis since 2007. However, prior to that, I was in South Africa. Since that time, I've also been to Botswana. I've been to Uganda. I've done work in Liberia, and Africa. Every time I go there, just fascinates me. The first level of fascination is based on the ignorance that I took with me to Africa. And that ignorance was spawned by media as a child growing up. Every time I saw Africa on television or in the movies, it was a frightening place. It was called the Dark Continent, not simply because the people were dark, but because of darkness being symbolic of being low economically, being backwards culturally, being deprived socially. And when I went to Ghana the first time, it blew my mind. When I went to South Africa, I was inspired. But when I went to Ghana, I was changed as a human being. So it was fascinating. Also fascinating because of some of the people that I met, many of whom you will meet today, and the opportunities that I saw, not only for people who are in Africa, but African Americans who now on a regular basis go back to West Africa, especially Ghana. The president of Ghana created a campaign called the Year of Return. And the Year of Return marked the 400th anniversary of the enslavement of Africans in America. And it turned into a real campaign, on both sides of the ocean, for Africans and African Americans to connect. That Year of Return is significant because at the Cape Coast Castle, where Africans were held prior to being put on slave ships, there is what they call a door of no return. And that door of no return faces the ocean. There was a gangplank that was placed at the bottom of that opening, and Africans were marched from their native soil to these ships, and the door of no return suggests that they would never return. Standing there for the first time, I had mixed emotions. I was both angry at what had happened to my ancestors, but I was also animated by the fact that we have returned. And so for me, this is both economic, it's emotional, it's spiritual, it's historical. And so when I did this post on Instagram and my other social media accounts, I got over 228,000 views just on one platform, and then responses, people wanting more information, people wanting strategies. And so today is the first of a few programs we'll have where we'll talk to people and really demythologize African economics and introduce people to what I call user-friendly strategies for people who have money to invest. Now, understand what this is not. I don't have a fund. I'm not asking you to buy anything from me. I don't plan to ask you to invest in the things I've invested in. I've made some small investments in Africa. I don't need any help. I'm a preacher and a teacher. I am not interested in you helping me make more money, nor am I interested in you risking money that you can't afford to lose. I mean, one of the principles of investing is don't invest money that you cannot afford to lose. So let's understand that. Any investment should be guided by the advice of a financial professional. Any investments, I don't care where it is, but you need the advice of a professional. So be clear on what this is not. What this is, hopefully, an opportunity to think thoughts you never thought before, see options you never knew existed, and understand the risk potential of a continent that has over 1 billion people in it. What I said in that post and what I really believe now is this: you could have 1 million followers on Instagram from Africa and no one in America even know who you are. There are things happening in Africa that are so exciting that hopefully it'll blow your mind as it has mine. So I have a lot of things going on in Africa, but anything I do on the continent of Africa, starting in Ghana, where I have a special relationship with the Achim Abuakwa Traditional Council, is the person that you'll hear from next. She has worked in various capacities. She went to school in England, so don't be confused. She sounds half British and half Ghanaian and half American. She's an entrepreneur. She's a farmer. She is a motivator. She's a mentor, and she's an expert in business. Ms. Angela Datson. Angela, thanks for joining us, and take it from here.
Good morning, family. Good morning, Dr. Soaries. Thank you for the introduction. I think my favorite part is the farming part, because that is a true passion for me. So thank you for inviting us to be here today on As the Expert, me in particular. When I got your email, the first person that I called was my brother, because he and I were closely together. I'm like, Dr. Soaries is putting this event together. He wants us to speak. And he was one step ahead of me already, because he had already seen your LinkedIn video. He had seen the comments. He was already participating in that engagement. So he was already ahead of me. And then, of course, he also called Bernard, who is a subject matter expert in investment banking. I'll talk a little bit about both of them in a minute. But Dr. Soaries, I just wanted to go on top of your wonderful overview and just add, Africa has a population of about 1.5 million people now. The beautiful thing about it is about 70% of that population is under 40 years old. So this is a very young and vibrant and growing part of the world with very ripe industry and, yes, great opportunities for investment as well. So you really hit the nail on the head there. In my line of work, and just a little bit about my own self, in my line of work, I have diversified over the years from farming, where I will be ending back very soon, my true passion. Currently, my business, Corporate Community Solutions, provides, as the name suggests, corporate solutions for corporate organizations. Now, this spans administrative support work, call center services, database management, email communication and correspondence, digital marketing, online learning, you name it. We provide all of those services outsourced from Ghana by Ghanaians. My staff is 100% Ghanaian, but I do, well, not 100%. I do have the majority Ghanaian staff, but I do have staff who live in different parts of the continent, and at least one other person who is non-Ghanaian and lives in South Africa. That is the staff base, and that is our main line of work. I also run First Step Tours, which is my second business. Now, First Step Tours' main focus is to provide, especially Africans living in the diaspora, anywhere in the world, the opportunity to travel through the continent, connecting with your roots, learning and immersing into the culture, but most importantly, also identifying opportunities that exist on the African continent, and not just in Ghana. This is throughout Africa. And then third, certainly not the least, is my nonprofit organization. It's called EBAM Africa Foundation. And our main focus there is pretty simple. we connect resources with need. So basically, we identify need, we identify resources, we're the bridge that connects the two. So that is mostly about me. I will pass it on to Norbert. Norbert is the founder of 33.19, and he will tell us about what he does in his organization.
Thank you very much, Angie. Thank you very much, Dr. Soaries. This is a pleasure, and I'm honored to be part of this program. So my sister has been a pillar in my life, guiding me in all my adventures and my initiatives. So when she mentioned this to me, I had already seen the post and I was quite interested. So I reached out to my friend Bernard, and then I asked him to be a part of it as well. So my company, 33.19, is an events company um, that focuses in events production in general. We do festivals, we do concerts, we do corporate events, conferences, workshops, seminars for organizations both in Ghana and across the continent. Quite recently, we've crossed the borders of the continent to enter into the UAE sphere, where our first client was Kia UAE. The other wings of the business includes film production and advertising. We've spread over the last couple of years. The team has grown substantially. We do have some staff that are working within Nigeria and Ghana. So my staff is mainly West African based. Yeah.
So let me jump in right here, because I think when people hear the word investing, and they think about where we're going with Bernard, but I think the first level of investing that I want everyone to understand that I made was outsourcing work and projects to people like Angela and engaging with people like Norbert to do work. You know, I'm on the board of a publicly held company that has 7,500 employees. 5,000 of those employees are in India and in the Philippines. That the United States economy is significantly engaged in outsourcing work across the world. I talked to someone just last week that signed a contract with people in the Ukraine. So while the Ukraine's at war, there are Ukrainians that are getting work from United States businesses. What I've decided is that as a pastor, I was not going to do what is traditionally called missions work. Rather, what I was going to do was to outsource work that we need done to people in Ghana who speak English in many cases better than we do, who have skills and who can work proficiently. And so instead of giving them free shoes and old clothes, we give them jobs so they can buy their own shoes and clothes. So outsourcing. Do you know that if national Black organizations, small Black businesses, nonprofit organizations, churches would outsource some of our tasks, like cleaning up our membership lists, like covering our telephones? Right now, one of my organizations has a telephone system where if people call our office, the staff that answers the phone is in Ghana, because technology has made all this possible. So I want you to write down outsourcing. When we get to the question and answer period, you can ask questions about outsourcing. But outsourcing is one of the types of investing in Africa that I am an absolute supporter of. I'm a participant in it, and I'm an advocate in you looking into outsourcing opportunities. Angela, introduce our special guest.
My pleasure, Dr. Soaries. Bernard Gate, he has extensive experience in venture capital, but also has a background in investment banking and telecommunications. So that is why he made a good candidate to join this conversation today. He's currently an investor at Norskin 22, covering mostly West Africa, but he actually works in parts of East Africa as well. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Bernard, so that he can tell us a little bit more about what he does.
Yeah, thanks, Angie, for the introduction, and thanks to Dr. Soaries and Nicole for putting this together, and thanks to everyone who is, either plugged into this session. Hopefully, we're able to provide you with, insightful takeaways that could help shape your thoughts around, um, to shape your thoughts when you think about investing in Ghana or the continent. So, like Angie said, my name is Bernard Gate. I'm a principal at Noskin 22. We are a 205 million growth stage fund. We provide growth capital to partner founders who have found product market fits, and we help them scale their businesses into multiple geographies to become regional winners. I'll just take a step back to just give a bit of context. So, a little over 2 years ago, we set out on an ambitious target to raise 200 million as a first-time fund, as a first-time Africa-focused fund, and it's been an exciting journey since we officially launched to date. We've made about 10 investments so far in African businesses. And at Noskin 22, our North Star is simple and straightforward, right? We are always looking for entrepreneurs who are passionate about Africa and who are leveraging technology to help solve some of our biggest challenges, right? Like Dr. Soros said, technology is probably one of the biggest tools for us to solve some of the biggest challenges we have. A lot of the infrastructure gaps across the continent can be filled by technology. So we focus on companies solving problems in financial health and inclusion, to establishing commerce or extending market structures to education and healthcare. Thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to the rest of the session.
That's great. Now, Nicole, you have been talking to business people every single week now for probably a year and a half. But I promise you, you have never had this kind of participation from people like these three guests whose potential, just because they are in Africa and they are African, the potential goes beyond anything most of us have ever dreamt about. So why don't you start? I know you have a question for Bernard. Why don't you start by asking Bernard a couple of questions? And then in a few minutes, folks, we're going to ask you to start typing your questions in, and Nicole will challenge all of us to answer those questions.
Bernard, again, thanks for being here today. We so appreciate your presence. And, I think it would be helpful for us as viewers just to understand what are those opportunities for us in investment when it comes to tech companies. Can you describe some of the clients you might have and give us examples of how we as investors, potential investors, may be able to support those companies?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to be good to give to set the scene, right, on VC as an asset class in Africa. So VC investments, not just in Ghana but the rest of the continent, has been going on for a while. But I would say we reached a significant or a major milestone sometime in 2022, just before the global test.
You're back now.
Okay. Yeah, I was mentioning that African startups about 2 years ago, before the global downturn, raised about 5 billion in VC funding, which is impressive, given that just 10 years ago, total funding in the calendar year was under 100 million. So give me a second. Let me just switch internet code.
Okay, and so while he's adjusting his technology on his end, Angie, I do have a question for you. So I think that, Reverend Soaries is right. So many people or companies or businesses are investing in other countries for outsourcing their work, like India and the Philippines. particularly for our community, where we may be looking into this for the first time, but may have some misconceptions about outsourcing work, what are some common misconceptions that you've experienced, and how do you help potential clients like us get over those misconceptions?
Number one is something Dr. Soaries said in his overview, the misconception of the dark continent. There are people who today still believe Africa is just one country. And that always surprises me. Almost every time I travel outside of Africa, I will encounter at least one person, engage in at least one conversation where Africa is referred to as one country, one destination. And I think for anyone who is interested in Africa, whether to invest or to do any kind of interaction whatsoever, the first thing they need to understand, it's 54 independent states with different leadership. And in the same way, language is diverse, culture is diverse, and you need to first come to have an appreciation for these characteristics before you can even begin to take any steps towards having interest in investment or any kind of engagement whatsoever. And therefore, one of the things that we want to highlight today, travel, that as a first step to any kind of investment or engagement you want to have with Africa, it behooves any individual to first travel to Africa, any part. Now, you can start with Ghana. We pride ourselves as the gateway to Africa. So you can start with Ghana. However, anywhere that you have particular interest, travel there first. Get to know the local culture, get to understand the people, learn how things operate in that country. It is likely very different from any ideas you may originally have. And it's important that you make your own opinion rather than just believe everything else that you see on the internet.
Yeah, and let me just add to this, and then we'll go back to Bernard. I've been to Egypt. My first trip to Africa was actually Egypt. And Egypt, contrary to what many people believe, is in Africa. But the countries above the Sahara Desert typically behave and have cultures that are more aligned with Arabic than with what we would consider traditional Africa. And so for today's purposes, we're talking basically about sub-Saharan Africa. My focus is on sub-Saharan Africa, even though there is an important discussion to have with the countries above the Sahara. But right now, our focus is on what colloquially has been described as Black Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, and the West Africa countries. So, Bernard, you're back, I think.
Yeah, the internet gods were disrupting my flow today, but I don't know where I ended up, but I was just trying to give a set the scene on VCS and asset class in Africa. So I mentioned that before the global downturn, the continent raised about $5 billion in total VC funding for startups based on the continent. And this is impressive, right? 10 years prior to that, VC as an asset class was not really a thing. And the total funding in a calendar year will typically be under 100 million. So from there to reaching 5 billion, which is almost 100x growth, is impressive. However, when you compare this to the total global funding, it's very tiny. It's just around 1% of global VC funding. So there's a big opportunity to spearhead investments towards VC as an asset class on the continent, because the opportunities are massive just because of the large infrastructure gaps that a lot of these technology startups can solve. And not to bore you with facts, but just, still to make you understand a bit more about the continent. Africa has one of the youngest populations, like Angie and Dr. Soaries both mentioned before. So the median age in Ghana is just around 21 years. In Nigeria, it's even younger, around 19 years, which is massive. This represents the workforce for the future, right? If you look at smartphone penetration in Ghana, it's about 70%, which is massive. Internet penetration is also, very high. mobile subscriber penetration is close to 100%, which is impressive. And even more impressive is mobile money adoption, which for non-Africans is basically a digital wallet on your mobile phone. So a lot of guys don't go to banks or banking halls to transact. They do everything on their phones. And Ghana also is very high on literacy rate, right? About 80% above the African average. So there's a lot of growth and promise if you can layer on technology to try and solve a lot of these problems. And I think my first, excitement area is in the business of agtech, which is basically agriculture technology. Because I mean, if not anything at all, 40% of the population in Ghana is in the agri space. So surely we must be able to digitize this space to make it more scalable, to make it more efficient. Unfortunately, a lot of the agriculture business in Ghana is still very low tech, subsistence, and low scale. But there's an opportunity to build platforms that connect these smallholder farmers to global off-takers who may be sitting in Europe, US, or somewhere in Southeast Asia. And what you are basically providing for these farmers is market access. Beyond market access, you can also use technology to provide them, on-demand, real-time weather insights, crop insights, to help them to be able to plan their own harvesting cycle. And even beyond that, a lot of the farmers need inputs like seedlings and equipment to operate their farms. But because we don't have a robust credit systems, and these guys may traditionally be out of the traditional banking space, they are not able to access credit. But with technology and they having phones in their hands, you can digitize them, you can provide them a financial identity to build, billion-dollar businesses just digitizing the agriculture value chain. So that's number one. Number two is just in trade and commerce. There's been massive growth in trade and commerce, and a lot of companies are trying to digitize this space, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity to open up Africa, not even Africa to the rest of the world, but intra-Africa. Today, a lot of the trade Africa does is either with Europe, Latin America, or North America, or Asia. Intra-Africa trade is still very low compared to Africa trading with the rest of the world. And this is because, 50 over 50 different countries, over 50 different languages, over 50 different currencies. But all of these things can be streamlined with technology to make it easy for Norbert to sell his services to a client in Kenya and easily get paid for it, to make it easy for someone who wants to visit Ghana to digitally pay for their services, to engage businesses from another part of the continent. So I think building platforms that promote intra-Africa trade is probably the second area which I'm excited about. There are other two sectors around healthcare, so building health tech solutions, so tech solutions that make telemedicine a bit more efficient, and also other solutions around fintech. There's been massive growth in payments and innovative banking, but I feel there's a bit more we can do in that space. I'll pause here, and maybe if there's more pointed questions around opportunities, I can jump on.
That's all great information. I mean, the idea that you can build $1 billion business from your phone, that's quite exciting. I've had multiple phones and haven't built anything. You're a venture capitalist, which means that your business requires that you do due diligence and do evaluations of companies before you invest, and that's the strength of a VC. Also, you have a background in investment banking, as Angela said, and so everyone listening who is from America right now could go online. They could open an account at a Ghanaian investment bank, just like they can at Citibank or Chase Bank or any American bank. I have an account at an investment bank in Accra. However, I think to Nicole's previous question, if I want to invest in an African technology company and I don't know anything about those companies, it would seem to me that I would want to invest in your fund or in your company and trust you to invest in the right companies because you do the research. Do
Yeah.
you have a retail opportunity for investors in your VC fund?
Yes, we do. You know, we so in our fund, we've raised money from the typical suspects. So DFIs are some of the investors in our fund. We've also raised money from a lot of family offices
Mm,
across the world. So I think the opportunity for retail investments, if it can be structured as a family office,
yeah.
that's easy. But we've also welcomed, high net worth individuals. We usually have for our fund specifically, we have like $1 million minimum threshold. So we've had individuals who have come to put in $1 million check in our fund. And the benefit, I'm not trying to market our fund, but
No.
the benefit of investing in a fund manager that is based on the continent and has local nuances is that they are on the continent and they can understand the due diligence process much better versus someone who is 4,000 miles away and may not have some of the local insights. So there's a big opportunity. We are not fundraising at the moment, but hopefully in the next 3 years when we start fundraising, there's a big opportunity for retail investments who can either come on their own name as individual high net worths or can come through a family office structure.
That's great. For folks that are watching, you heard Bernard mention family offices. Our next live D-Free event is going to be our FinFest, November 8th and 9th in Long Branch, New Jersey. And the opening session of that event is going to be a fireside chat with a man who runs billion-dollar family offices. He'll explain what a family office is, how to access either philanthropic or investment funds from family offices. If you want to sign up, it's free. The whole event is free. Go to dfreefoundation.org and click FinFest, and you can have access to that opportunity. Family offices are institutions, entities that we should know more about. And we have one of the top family office managers coming to be with us at FinFest. That's a great introduction to venture capital in Africa. The other, Angela Dadson, the other level of investment I'd like at least to explore before we go to Q&A is philanthropic investments. I have relationships with billion-dollar philanthropists. Part of my life is giving advice to philanthropic causes. And the difference that I've learned from the ultra high net worth people who do philanthropy, they don't call it donations. They call it social investing. That philanthropic giving for very wealthy people is characterized as investing. When we have done our little work, the library in Chevy, the health clinic, the job center, we've encouraged our people to understand their philanthropic gifts, their donations, if you will, as investments. Now, these are not investments that we are trying to get a return on financially ourselves. These are investments in the community and the people who benefit from our investments. Talk more about philanthropic investing.
Gladly, Dr. Sori. So, as you rightly said, and I can start with just the first example being the most recent philanthropic investment that we commissioned. It is a skills training center that was built and established for the Kibi School for the Deaf. Now, this school is where about 200 kids with some form of hearing or speech impairment go to. Now, these kids range in ages from 2 years all the way to 20 something. And even though the school is just a middle school, but that's because of the stigma that still surrounds impairments and disability in some of our rural communities. This institution that we have built for the school has resounding impact. And this is how it's not just the 200 kids that go to that school that are now going to be able to receive additional training in hairstyling, in dressmaking and tailoring, in shoemaking, in kente weaving, which is that beautiful fabric, Dr. Soaries, that you have in your background, and it is 100% hand woven. They're also receiving skills training in catering and culinary skills, all of that. But not just for those 200 kids. It's for the next generation and the next generation of kids who will go through that school because it's now an established part of that institution. It also means that they have career skills even as they're leaving that institution and going out into the world, whether or not they get the opportunity for further education. And then it also means that they're now breadwinners. They're able to earn an income, take care of themselves, and also support the extended families. So we only went in to build a skills training center for the Kibi School for the Deaf. But I've just listed out the impact that it's going to have on generations and multiple layers of extended family systems. Now, this also applies to the healthcare center, which is an infirmary that we built, and the community library, which serves children from schools in more than 8 communities in the area where we established the library. So on and on, we have established several facilities through philanthropic investments, as you described, over the last, what, maybe 12 to 14 years that we've been working together. And the impact is huge. So the next phase of our philanthropic work over the next 12 months is building public bathroom facilities for 5 communities. And again, the impact is huge. It's not just for the people who currently live in the community, but generationally and in partnership with the local government for the management and maintenance and sustainability of these projects, lifelong impact. This is just an example of some of what we do through our philanthropic activities.
So, folks, I want us to change the way we talk about donating money and think about our donations as investments, because they don't inure financial benefit to the donor, but they certainly do create benefits for the recipients of those donations. Now, of course, if you structure it properly, you can get a tax benefit from philanthropic donations, but that's a bonus. That's an extra. The real impact is made by the people who benefit from the donation. One more point. Before, I think I said this before, but I'll say it again before we go, Nicole, the Q&A. Norbert, I have a lot of friends in the entertainment industry, and I think if we want to bring a big gospel festival to Ghana, I need to call you to be my vendor over there to make sure the staging, the lighting, the sound, all of that was in place. Is that an accurate assumption about your business?
Yes, that's 100% spot on. So my company produces events all cycle. So we do from design, marketing, stage construction, development. We do event management, that is festival ground management level, security strategy. We do vendor acquisition and event management itself and stage coordination as well. So it's a full 360 event company.
Yeah, that's great. So folks, for those who have an interest in partnering with a local company to do any kind of production, any kind of event, Norbert and people like Norbert are throughout the continent. Again, my point today is to help all of us understand the capabilities that already exist in Africa. And there's so many of us who just need that information. I went to a segregated elementary school. It was all Black students, all white teachers. I never learned a thing about Black people, but I was going to school with all Black people. And I'm embarrassed to say that I'm continuing to learn things about Africa in particular that I should have learned 50 years ago. I called myself an activist. I've called myself a pastor, living in such ignorance about not just the origins of our people, but the realities of our people today, that I'm so passionate because I'm trying to make up for lost time. So, Nicole, have you browsed the questions? Because I'd like to spend the rest of our time having our expert panelists answer some of the specific questions of our guests.
Yes, we do have a question. So Bernard, thank you so much for giving us a high level landscape of economic opportunities. I'm fascinated by the different areas of growth, right? Agri-tech, trade and commerce, health tech, some of the things that you mentioned. One of the questions from our viewers asks, is there a place for investing in mining minerals used in batteries and solar power? So I don't know within your portfolio if mining is a significant sector. And even if it's not, can you talk about that industry?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, Noskin 22, we don't invest in extractive businesses, right? We are more on soft infrastructure and technology enabled businesses. So it's one area that we don't do, but it's not because it's not a great place to invest. But I think the opportunities are there. I can I just don't have on the top of my head structures around directly investing in there, but it's something I can find and maybe share more insights with Angie and the rest of the team. But my fund, we don't specifically focus on minerals extraction, etc.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, if there are any other questions while we wait for more questions to come in, I do. So I think Angie shared with us that you have some background in banking, correct? And
Yes, that's
so,
correct.
yeah. And so, I think there's another. I'm sorry. Let me just pause that. There's another question that just came in. So the question is, if someone is new to investing, especially in a different continent, what are some suggestions on where to start or what to read to learn more? How do you get started, basically?
Okay, I'm happy to take that. Maybe the rest of the team can join in. So, look, even though I'm in VC, I'll say venture capital investments is probably the last place for somebody who's very new to investments. I'm not trying to push people away, but it's just the truth because the key features of VC is high risk, high reward. So, venture capital is different, is slightly different from the typical private equity or traditional investments will know because a lot of the startups or early stage companies we invest in would still be, will not be profitable. There are some who will not even be post revenue. But that's a feature of VC as an asset class because you are investing in the potential of the company doing well, and the returns can be substantial when the company succeeds. So if you're very new to investments, maybe VC is probably not the first place to focus on. But like I said, if you go through the fund manager route where you give your money to an experienced fund manager who's on the continent, probably makes sense because they can make a bit more educated decisions on your behalf. So that's on the VC side. Now there are a lot more traditional investment products available for retail investments. Like Dr. Soaries mentioned, he himself has opened and operates an account in Ghana with one of the large investments banks here who focus on retail investments across fixed income, balanced portfolio, which straddle both fixed income and equities. And there are also products which are tailored to specific areas of the sector. So I think for a retail investor, perhaps opening a product with any of the, I don't want to market any specific company on the call, but we can send, happy to send a list of some of the, good performing investment banks, not just in Ghana, but the rest of the continent, if you are interested, and highlight what some of the products are. I think that's a good entry level for investments. And as you graduate and have a bit more appetite for risk, maybe you can explore other asset classes like venture capital.
Yeah, that's the exact answer I would give, Bernard. The only thing I would add is to reiterate the fact that all of us need access to professional financial advice. A financial professional, certified, not someone like me who just likes money. I'm talking about somebody who's been trained, someone who is certified, someone who has a license, just like pilots need license to fly planes, doctors need license to perform surgery. financial professionals need a license. And what happens is they look at your entire situation, your entire financial situation, your income, your expenses, your assets, your liabilities, your goals, and your timetable. And then they will help you understand, first of all, how much you can afford to invest, what your investment strategy options are. And again, in the case of risk, how much risk, they'll help you identify how much risk you're willing to take. All of the investments that I have in Ghana stay in Ghana. I never expect to use any of the money that my investments make in Ghana personally, never. My son is a co-signer on my account. When I die, my son will have access to all of the assets that I'm building in Ghana. So I've never touched the money. Any money that I earn in Ghana through one of my small investments goes into the investment account, and I have no plans for my life based on the growth in Ghana. However, the investment I'm making in Ghana will ultimately benefit my descendants, and in the meantime, benefits the people that fund supports. So it starts with a financial professional. And if you don't know how to pick a financial professional, we have trained over 100 African-American financial professionals to work with us. They volunteer their time to do a financial consultation. And if you send us an email, dfree.com/get-help, you can sign up for a financial professional, and we will send them to you for either a first opinion or second opinion, and give you a sense of what your investment strategy can and should be. Some of us aren't ready to start investing in anything. Some of us just need to pay off those high interest credit cards, and that'll be a better investment than any mutual fund or any startup company you can invest in.
Thank you for that. And I appreciate the distinction that you made between what short-term investments are versus long-term investments, and how investing for you in Ghana really in the short term is benefiting the people that you're supporting, and your long-term investment as part of your legacy in your state. So one of the questions that we have here is, I believe this is directed toward you, Angie. How do we connect with the people of Ghana for services?
You can start by just reaching out to me. Send me an email. I'll put my email in the chat, adatson@corpcominc.com. So I'll put in the chat now. You can start from there. What we're also hoping to do, and I know that the producer put a link in the chat, fill out that quick survey, tell us your specific areas of interest so we can bring specific programming that addresses those questions you have. Or, like whoever was asking about the mining sector, minerals, for example, are you interested in entertainment, media, marketing, healthcare, pharmaceutical, whatever it is? Just put that in the quick survey. It's really short, and then we'll be able to give you more information. But I'll put my email in the chat also right now.
And I have to confess, Nicole, that when it comes to money, for me, relationships drive everything. Because if I know you and I trust you, then I can depend upon you to keep your word. I can depend upon you to deliver the service. And so when we do more of these Investing in Africa series, we're going to start with people that we know and trust. We're not just searching the continent looking for interesting people. I know the people who started the stock exchange in Botswana. I know them personally. I know the president of Liberia. In fact, he made me a chief before the Ghanaians made me a chief.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So I know the president of Liberia. When he was vice president, he's a Baptist deacon. So I know him and the prominent senators in Liberia. We know people in Uganda. We know traditional leaders in Uganda. And so while we can't answer every question and we can't solve every problem, we do have contacts and relationships. And whether it's the United States, whether it's the African continent, or whether it's China. When I went to China coordinated by people that I know. And I just think, money is too hard to make and it's too easy to lose. And so everything I do in business is through relationships. And if I don't know the person, I need to know the person who knows the person. And so we're going to build out answers to your questions, but understand how we operate. It's always through relationships. And those relationships, nothing's flawless, but I've discovered that relationships that have been tested and proven over time are the ones that yield the best results.
Okay, so it's so funny. We are toward the end of our session, but the questions are starting to pop in now. And so one question for Bernard or Norbert, what's the minimum investment requirement? You know, people, they don't know where to start, and they just want to know what is that low threshold that they can get going with investing in Africa.
Well, let me say this before Bernard speaks. Again, if you're asking what I think you're asking, it's probably true that you want to set up an account at an investment bank, which, like I did, I set up an account with $1,000 US. That's where it started. And there are mutual funds you can buy in Africa for less than $1,000. But if you're new to investing and your financial professional has given you a sense of how much you can afford to invest, then you want to go through an institution. You're going to need $1 million minimum to invest in a fund like Bernard's when it's available. But to get started, you can get started there the same way you get started here. There's some mutual funds in America that require $250 minimum. There are others that require a $2,500 minimum. When it comes to philanthropic investing, you can start with $10 because there are projects in Ghana where $10 can turn into $200 for a woman who needs to buy some seeds to plant some crops to sell on the side of the road. So there is no minimum for investing, whether it's philanthropic investing, outsource investing, or institutional investing. But the minimum is determined by the institution, the relationship, your capacity, and the goal.
Dr. Soaries, if I may just add to that, because I saw another question that ties in, and this question had to do with when you mentioned about forming relationships through trust and how to get started with investing or starting investing that way. The question was about how do we actually start? How do we develop these relationships? That starts with one of the things that we said in the beginning. Make up your mind to visit the continent, depending on which areas interest you. And again, I say go to Ghana if you're not sure where to start from. We are not called the gateway to Africa for no reason, because we're the easiest place, the nicest and most hospitable people to start from. Also, through our First Step tours, we actually host annual tours to Ghana. Dr. Soaries has been traveling to Ghana since 2007. I first met you in 2008. I've been managing all your tours since then. Next year, we have tours to Ghana, we have tours to East Africa, and these are usually about 10-day tours where we give you 4 pillars. We give you the cultural immersion, we give you the historical experience, there's also the tourism, because you have to have some fun, and then finally the philanthropic arm, the community development part of the tours. So that is a good place to start. Again, send us an email, adatson@corcominc.com, if you'd like to learn more. Or fill out that form that was posted in the chat. That way we'll be able to identify your specific areas of interest and reach out to you about them.
Bernard, we both cut you off.
No. I think all very useful inputs. And I think, Dr. Soaries, you answered the question, you hit the nail right on its head. I think, there's really no minimum investments for traditional retail investments. Maybe for funds like myself, for funds like Nord Stream 22, like I mentioned, there's a threshold. But if you just want to start in traditional investments, there's really no minimum. It's up to you. You can start with as low as $10. You can start with as high as $10,000. But, I'll go back to the advice from Dr. Soaries in the beginning. Get in touch with your professional investment advisor, understand your own, financial situation. The investment advisor will help you carve out an investment plan based on your background in financial health, and I think you can start from there on how much you want to set aside. So it's for retail investments is really individual dependent and based on what your own plans are, and a professional can help you carve out those plans effectively.
So Norbert, you know what I'm waiting for from you and your team. So don't forget me. And Nicole, let me thank you once again for allowing us to invade your Wednesday programming. I think Angela Datson, we're going to have to take seriously the interest in this subject and perhaps do a show on ongoing series that's specifically dedicated to investing in Africa. The interest has been far in excess of what I ever expected or received. I mean, this subject has gotten more interest to my audiences than I've ever gotten for any other subject. And I thought I had some good subjects before, but people are really interested. People are really interested, and I'm encouraged by their interest. So, folks, fill out the survey. Give us your opinion because we plan to do this. There's a wonderful book called "Closing the Gap," written by an African author, and the focus of the book is understanding the why and the how of African Americans specifically investing in and doing business in Africa. We have again the Export-Import Bank, which is focusing on certain parts of Africa, run by a Black woman in Washington, and she's going to be one of our guests. And then there are other companies in other countries that we'd like to expose you to. So I think this is going to be one of those new tasks that I'm going to embrace while I'm trying to do less work in my retirement.
Okay. And then can everyone, I think, Angela, we have your contact information, but for our other experts, if people want to contact you, Bernard, if an entrepreneur wants to submit their executive summary to you, or someone wants to start or host an event in Ghana, how can we get in contact with the two of you?
Yeah, I think an easy way to reach out to me on LinkedIn, it's so Bernard Gatti on LinkedIn. I'm probably the only Bernard Gatti who's a VC investor on LinkedIn. So please reach out to me, or you can send me an email on bernard@norskin22.com.
Great.
Yeah, I can be reached on LinkedIn as well as Norbert Datson on LinkedIn. I hope I'm also the only Norbert Datson on LinkedIn. And you can also email me at norbkd@33.19.com.
Perfect. So thank you, everyone. This was such a great episode. I know that this is the start of the beginning. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in investing. And so we look forward to continuing with this series. That concludes our episode today. Just know that D-Free is sponsored by Prudential. We are thankful for Prudential. And as Dr. Soaries mentioned, we have certified financial advisors that can give you some guidance for free. So if you go to our link that we shared, you'll be able to have access to a financial advisor. So there you have it. Another episode. See you same time, same place next week.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.
Thank you.